Imagine this. Sacks and sacks of cash being hauled into a bank branch.
Wow.
Or maybe, just maybe, a single bill for champagne hitting over 2 million euros at a nightclub.
That's insane. It sounds like something straight out of a movie script, doesn't it?
It really does,
Huh.
but it's very much rooted in reality.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Welcome, everyone, to the Deep Dive. And for this installment, we're doing something a little different, a special book talk finance.
Yeah, this should be fun.
We're taking a deep look inside an absolutely incredible piece of investigative journalism that
Yeah.
honestly reads like the most thrilling, can't-put-it-down novel you'll ever pick up.
And the book is Billion Dollar Whale by Tom Wright and Bradley Hope. The subtitle is The Man Who Fooled Wall Street, Hollywood, and the World.
Quite the claim.
And as you'll hear, it delivers on that promise in spades. It really does.
It absolutely does. And for this book talk, our mission really is to guide you through the most important parts of this incredibly complex financial saga.
Yeah, it gets complicated fast.
Right. We're going to unpack the key elements, introduce the central characters, follow the wild events, all to help you figure out what happened, why it matters.
And hopefully hit some aha moments.
Exactly, without getting too bogged down in, all the financial jargon.
And it's worth knowing who wrote this. Tom Wright and Bradley Hope. They were Wall Street Journal reporters. They were right there on the front lines breaking key parts of this story.
Ah, okay.
So that gave them unique access, unique perspective,
Yeah.
to chronicle these events as they actually unfolded.
Right. Makes sense. It makes for a powerful account. So let's unpack this story. It really centers around this figure named Zhou Ho.
Mm-hmm.
And where he came from is maybe the first surprise. He wasn't born into that kind of dynastic old money wealth you might expect, given how he lived later.
That's right. His family's fortune was relatively newer. His grandfather came over to Penang in the 60s from China, and it was his father, Larry Lowe, who really built things up,
Wow.
mainly through a garment business. Actually, after an earlier cocoa plantation business failed.
Gotcha. So wealthy by Malaysian standards, I think the book mentions his father's shares were worth maybe $15 million, which is, significant money anywhere.
Sure.
But they weren't old money. Definitely not royalty or the political elite from the start.
Larry Lowe, the father, though,
Mhm.
he had serious social ambitions, and he clearly saw education as the way to get there.
Ah, the classic route.
Yeah. He moved Jeho to international schools in Malaysia, like Upland, then sent him off to these elite British boarding schools, specifically Harrow,
The Harrow. Okay.
Yep. and later Wharton in the U.S. for university.
And that education strategy, that was absolutely key, wasn't it? It wasn't just about getting a good degree.
No, it was proximity, networking, from a really young age.
Right.
At Harrow, Jeho was mixing with global elites, Malaysian elites, even royalty from Brunei and Kuwait.
Wow.
And then in London, his dad bought an apartment in Kensington Green, this complex where they met Rizie's.
Okay, and Riz Aziz.
His stepfather was none other than the future prime minister, Najib Razak.
There it is. That's the connection.
That early connection, cultivated through Riza, became absolutely pivotal years down the line. And even when Jeho was at Wharton, the book describes his dad sending him tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Regularly.
For what? Books? Tuition?
Nope.
Yeah.
Specifically for gambling trips and partying.
Seriously.
Yeah, the goal was explicitly to help him make a name for himself, to get in with the children of these incredibly influential families.
Okay, that just screams intentional network building. Wow. And he started flashing wealth early on?
Oh yeah, the book mentions his Winton office in the Petronas Towers, like Malaysia's fanciest office space back then. He took out a loan for it, spared no expense decorating. Even then, he seemed to get the power of appearances.
Right. He had to look the part.
He was observant. He saw how wealth and connections turned into real power, especially with investments. He looked at sovereign wealth funds like Abu Dhabi's Mubadala, run by Khaldoon Al-Mubarak, managing billions.
Huge sums.
And he clearly wanted to control something like that. But first, he needed seed money, a lot of seed money to get started.
And that ambition seems to have just perfectly collided with the needs of Malaysia's rising political stars.
Which brings us right to the key players on the Malaysian side. At the center, you've got Najib Razak.
Right.
From a powerful political dynasty, his dad was a former PM, but maybe someone who grew up a bit less constrained than his father, more open to, let's say, certain kinds of influence.
Okay.
And then there was Rosma Mansour, his wife. The book really details her appetite for extremely lavish spending. And she had this demanding retinue around her.
Not exactly Loki, then.
Not at all. And Joholo got introduced to them through Riza Aziz, remember him?
Yeah, the stepson.
And the book describes how fast Lowe made himself indispensable. He became like an unofficial aide,
Hmm.
arranging things like Najib's really important tour of the Middle East. Basically became their go-to fixer for high-level connections and deals.
Wow. Quick work.
And those Middle East connections were absolutely critical. Lowe focused heavily on figures like Khadem al-Qubaisi.
Yeah.
He was the managing director of IP-ICE.
Okay, remind us. IP is.
International Petroleum Investment Company. Huge Abu Dhabi sovereign wealth fund. The book says it managed something like $70 billion back then.
70 billion. Okay.
Yeah. Al-Qubaisi was known for his insane car collection, apparently, and he had a close relationship with Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed Al Nahyan.
The name sounds familiar. Abu Dhabi Royal.
Exactly. Powerful royal, chairman of IPI. He basically provided a level of cover, legitimacy for what Al-Qubaisi was doing.
Got it. And who else from the Middle East?
There was Mohammed Al-Husseini. He was the CEO of ABAR.
ABAR. AABAR. That was part of IPS.
Correct. A key subsidiary. Al-Husseini was Al-Qubaisi's main ally in a lot of these schemes. And then Yusuf Al-Otaiba, the UAE ambassador to the U.S.
Okay, another big name.
Yeah, influential diplomat. The book mentions him being involved in deals with Lowe, too. But it also notes he wanted discretion, didn't want his dealings with Lowe widely known.
Interesting. Okay, so Malaysian political side, check. Middle Eastern facilitators, check. Now, the bankers, they must have been crucial enablers here.
Oh, absolutely central. Figures like Timothy Leisner at Goldman Sachs.
Goldman, okay, big player.
Leisner was chairman of Southeast Asia for Goldman. The book kind of describes him as this deal maker who Goldman gave a long leash to.
Meaning?
Meaning maybe they overlooked some potential red flags, especially because the bank was pushing hard to grow its Asia business at the time. Andrea Vella was another key Goldman person mentioned.
Right. And it wasn't just Goldman, was it?
No, definitely not. BSI was huge, too. A Swiss private bank, offices in Singapore. Hans-Peter Brenner, the Asia CEO, he went on this big hiring spree from Coates.
Coates, the Queen's Bank.
That's the one. He brought in bankers like Yak Yuchi. Yak became Joholo's star banker. The book says Yak was pulling in something like $5 million a year just from that connection.
$5 million a year. Wow.
And Yeo Jiawei, another BSI banker, who later left to work directly for Lowe, he played a big part too. Apparently, he had a bit of disdain for other bankers, thought he was smarter.
Sounds like quite the character. Any other banks involved?
Oh yeah, the list goes on. Deutsche, JP Morgan, Coutts itself, Ambank in Malaysia, Standard Chartered, even Wells Fargo pops up later. The money flowed through a lot of pipes.
Okay, so beyond the bankers, lawyers. You hear about lawyers in these things. Did they play a role?
Critical role.
Ah.
Especially in enabling the secrecy. Firms like Sherman and Sterling were used for something called IOLTAs.
IOLTAs, what's that?
Interest on lawyer trust accounts. Basically, accounts lawyers hold for client funds. The book says Lowe moved huge sums, like $148 million initially, then up to $369 million total into these IOLTA accounts over just 12 months.
And why use those?
Lawyer-client privilege. It creates this layer of opacity, makes it really hard for investigators to see what's going on inside those accounts easily. White & Case was another firm involved, arranging a $2 million broker fee, apparently.
Okay, so the system has these vulnerabilities. Now, what about the people who blew the whistle? The investigator?
Right. Crucial part of the story. There's Xavier Justo. He worked for Petrosaudi.
Petrosaudi. We'll get to them.
Yeah. He had a dispute over his severance pay, basically, and ended up getting his hands on server data from the company. That data became the source for the initial leaks.
But it wasn't smooth sailing for him.
Not at all. He was later arrested, imprisoned in Thailand, faced a lot of pressure.
Wow. And who else?
Claire Rucastle Brown. She runs the Sarawak Report blog. Absolutely instrumental. She started exposing details early on, even coined the phrase heist of the century. She embedded documents online, which really helped push things forward.
So a blogger really broke this open.
She played a huge role, yeah. And then the Wall Street Journal team, including Ken Brown, Paul Beckett, Patrick Barta, and the authors themselves, Tom Wright and Bradley Hope.
Right, the authors.
They just relentlessly pursued investigations into Najib's bank accounts, the discrepancies with IPAC. Their reporting was crucial in making the whole scandal undeniable.
And then the official investigations kicked in.
Eventually, yes. Particularly the U.S. Department of Justice and the FBI. Figures like Robert Hoykling and Bill McMurray led teams focused on combating kleptocracy globally. And they launched what became the largest asset seizure in U.S. history related to this case.
Largest ever.
Hmm.
Just incredible. And we can't forget the whole Hollywood and party scene aspect, right? This wasn't just dry finance.
Not even close. It was about building this facade. Leonardo DiCaprio, Martin Scorsese, they were promised funding for The Wolf of Wall Street, which is kind of ironic.
Very ironic.
Celebrities like Paris Hilton, Jamie Foxx, nightclub owners Jason Strauss and Noah Tepperberg, this talent booker Joey McFarland, who got really close to Hilton, Lowe, and Rizzi Aziz.
So they were all just hanging out.
Well, the book notes it wasn't just hanging out. Even major stars, like the ones mentioned, took payments, actual cash, to show up at Lowe's insane parties.
So it was transactional.
Seems like it often was, yeah. Even Swizz Beatz and Alicia Keys were in the orbit. Swizz Beatz actually helped Lowe start his art collection.
Okay, so it was all part of the performance, building this image. So with this whole network of players in place, how did the money actually move? What were the mechanics of these schemes?
Right, the nuts and bolts. The first major theft, what the book calls the first heist, happened really early, 2009. The Petra-Saudi joint venture.
Okay, what was that?
1MDB, the Malaysian state fund Lowe was advising, invested $1.5 billion in a joint venture with this company, Petra-Saudi, supposedly based on Petra-Saudi's assets.
Okay, sounds like a deal, but...
But almost immediately, $700 million of that $1.5 billion got diverted, sent straight to Jay Hill's company, Goodstar Limited.
700 million, just like that. Where was Good Start based?
Seychelles, a classic offshore shell company.
And the banks just let this happen.
Well, the book describes confusion at banks like Deutsche and Coates. Lowe and his people gave conflicting stories about who Goodstar even represented. But ultimately, JP Morgan processed the massive wire transfer. The money flowed out.
Wow, and this was fast, right?
Breathtakingly fast. Happened within like a month of the JV agreement. Virtually no time for proper due diligence. The authors suggest Lowe might have initially just wanted a commission, but when that didn't work out, he basically just pivoted and took a huge chunk of the initial investment instead.
Unbelievable. Okay, so that was heist number one. What came next?
Then came the Goldman Sachs bonds, the really big hauls. In 2012 and 2013, Goldman helped 1MDB raise $3.5 billion through two massive bond issues.
$3.5 billion, and Goldman's role was?
They arranged the sales, underwrote them. Internally, they were called Project Maximus and Project Catalyze.
And Goldman made good money on this, I assume?
Yeah, huge fees. $192 million on the first bond, $114 million on the second. Big payday for the bank.
Okay. And the money raised, did it actually go to 1MDB's intended project?
Well, again, huge portions got siphoned off almost immediately after hitting the 1MDB accounts.
How much this time?
After the second bond in 2012, $790.3 million disappeared. It was sent to a company that looked like an IPIC subsidiary called A-Bar. Exactly. It wasn't the real A-Bar. It was a copycat entity registered in the BVI with a deliberately similar name designed to confuse everyone. Wow, that's brazen. And the third bond? After the third bond in 2013, an even bigger chunk, $1.2 billion, was stolen. This money got moved through some funds set up in Curaçao and ended up in Tenori Finance, another British Virgin Islands company, controlled by an associate of Lowe's.
And this is where the trail leads somewhere significant.
Right to the top.
Yeah.
The book explicitly states that $681 million of that money from Tenori Finance was transferred directly into Prime Minister Najib Razak's personal secret Ambank account in Kuala Lumpur.
681 million into the Prime Minister's account.
Yep. And Wells Fargo acted as the correspondent bank for those dollar transfers, so they processed them.
Wow, so the use of shell companies, offshore structures, that was fundamental.
Absolutely fundamental. Companies in places like the Seychelles, the BVI, you could set them up easily through firms like Trident Trust or Mossack Fonseca for a fee. They offered layers and layers of secrecy.
And these places exist specifically for this kind of thing.
Well, the book describes them as offshore, precisely because their financial systems are built to hold non-resident money discreetly. Minimal questions asked, often. There's safe harbors for money launderers, and while there's pressure, their business relies on fees, which incentivizes, discretion.
Got it. And you mentioned Curaçao. What was going on there?
That was another layer of complexity. They used Amacorp-administered funds there. The book explains this structure using segregated portfolios within what looked like a mutual fund.
Okay, break that down a bit.
Think of it like a big box labeled mutual fund. Inside, you put different people's money in separate little compartments or segregated portfolios.
Right.
When money was moved out of the big mutual fund box, it just looked like a withdrawal from the fund. It completely hid which specific little compartment the one holding the stolen cash it actually came from.
Ah, okay. So it washes the money by making it look like a legit investment withdrawal.
Exactly. BSI, the bank, vouched for 1MDB, and Amacorp apparently didn't ask too many hard questions. They set up like $1.5 billion worth of these structures. It provided a legal wrapper, even if the purpose underneath was highly questionable.
Clever in a terrifying way. And the lawyer trust accounts, the IOLTAs again.
Yep, back to Sherman and Sterling. Lowe used these as a kind of safe harbor for cash. Because of lawyer-client privilege, they're hard for investigators to access easily. He was actually funding parties, making purchases directly from these lawyer accounts.
That seems like a loophole.
The book notes the Financial Action Task Force has pointed this out, that lawyers in the U.S. often aren't required to report suspicious activity like bankers are. It's seen as a weak spot in fighting money laundering.
Okay. And one more hiding place you mentioned.
The Geneva Freeport. Fascinating place. Basically a super secure, tax-free storage facility for valuables, like art, gold, wine.
Tax-free storage.
Lowe used it to stash some of the art he bought pieces by Mark Ryden at Russia. It offered discretion, sure, but crucially, it avoided questions about provenance, where the art, or the money to buy it, came from. The book flat out calls it a money launderer's paradise.
Wow. So multiple layers of really sophisticated financial maneuvers, all designed to do one thing, move and hide unbelievable amounts of money.
Exactly.
And where did it all go? This brings us to the opulent spending, which, as you said, wasn't just random excess.
Precisely. And the scale is just staggering. The book details $85 million spent in just 8 months.
8 months on what?
Alcohol, gambling, private jets, yachts, paying celebrities to show up. This is between late 2009 and mid-2010.
85 million. That's hard to even comprehend.
And then there's the infamous story of the $2 million champagne bill in Saint-Tropez. Lowe and some competitor basically got into a bidding war, buying crystal just to spray it around and show off in a nightclub.
Just burning money.
Literally, an $800,000 payment to Swizz Beatz just for performing at a Las Vegas birthday bash. It really boggles the mind. And then the actual assets. Property.
Oh, yeah. Penthouses in New York, Park Laurel, the Time Warner Center one, was $30.5 million alone. A townhouse in London, a stake in the Park Lane Hotel.
And yachts. Plural.
Multiple yachts, including the $20 million Siram, and then he commissioned the custom-built $500 million mega yacht, the Equanimity.
$500 million for a yacht.
Yep. He built up an art collection, too. Remember, Swizz Beatz helped him, buying incredibly valuable pieces like a $1.2 million Metropolis movie poster.
And the spending on Rosma Mansur, the prime minister's wife.
Absolutely immense. The book details these lavish jewelry buys from Lorraine Schwartz. One bill was $1.3 million for 27 bracelets and necklaces, bought all at once.
97 pieces.
In one go. Her credit card spending apparently topped $6 million just since 2008. And she was using Malaysian government jets for shopping trips.
Okay, but the crucial point here, the book argues, is the purpose behind all this spending. Absolutely critical. This wasn't just reckless personal indulgence, though it definitely looked like it. It was a deliberate, calculated strategy.
To do what?
To build a reputation. To gain access to elites, Hollywood, politics, finance. To make himself seem powerful, legitimate, successful, indispensable. The spending created this incredibly potent facade of real wealth that opened doors.
And maybe silenced questions.
Perhaps more importantly, yeah, it seemed to stop people asking too many questions about where the money actually came from.
So the extravagance wasn't just a side effect of the theft. It was an integral part of the whole scheme. It built the illusion.
Precisely. It was the ultimate fake it till you make it approach, just on an absolutely unprecedented global scale, funded by billions of dollars of stolen money.
And obviously, with a scheme this huge and this public in its spending, eventually people started asking questions. There must have been attempts to suppress the truth.
Oh, absolutely. Huge efforts. In Malaysia itself, Prime Minister Najib had significant control over the mainstream media, made it very hard for the real story to get out domestically.
Right. Control the narrative.
Exactly. They tried to silence critics, using things like the sedition law, and there was major interference in official investigations. Firing auditors who got too close.
Firing them.
Yep. Classifying audit reports as state secrets to keep them hidden. Pressuring banks. Manipulating the task forces that were supposedly set up to investigate 1MDB.
So stonewalling from the top, what about the whistleblowers?
They were actively targeted, discredited. Xavier Justo, the Petro-Saudi guy, he was charged, thrown in a Thai prison. Figures like Patrick Mahoney from Petro-Saudi apparently put pressure on him.
And Clary Castle-Brown, the blogger.
Same thing. Efforts to dismiss her in the Sarawak report. Najib publicly brushed off her reporting. Petrosotti put out statements denying everything. They even used a supposedly independent review by a firm called PGI Protection Group International to cast doubt on her documents in government-friendly media.
Trying to muddy the waters.
Definitely. And journalists, especially the Wall Street Journal team, they faced active attempts to block the reporting. The book mentions things like tracking reporters, false warnings being issued about them, official records suddenly disappearing or being altered,
Wow. So active obstruction.
and constant efforts to cover the money trails.
Uh-huh.
Mohammed al-Husseini, the ABAR CEO, reportedly burned documents in Tel Aviv at one point.
Burning evidence.
And using those opaque structures, we talked about the Amarcord funds in Curacao, the IOLTAs, specifically to hide where the money came from. There were even lobbying efforts launched in the U.S. trying to shut down the Department of Justice probe.
Trying to stop the U.S. investigation.
Yeah, pulling out all the stops. But despite all these efforts, investigations started to gain momentum. Different jurisdictions began looking into it. Bank Negara, Malaysia, the central bank,
Okay.
police in Singapore, authorities in Switzerland, and crucially, the U.S. DOJ and FBI. And the book really highlights how the Wall Street Journal's persistent, detailed reporting was key in uncovering specifics that pushed many of these official probes forward.
So the journalism really drove the official action.
It played a massive role, yeah.
Yeah.
And eventually, consequences started to hit, though mostly outside Malaysia at first.
Like what?
The U.S. DOJ filed that huge civil asset forfeiture suit, the largest kleptocracy seizure in U.S. history at the time. It specifically named key players, Lowe, Riza Aziz, Al-Qubaisi, Al-Husseini, and aimed to freeze assets bought with stolen money. Property, expensive art, a private jet.
Trying to claw back the assets. What about Singapore?
Singapore took really significant action. They seized assets linked to the case too. And notably, they revoked the banking license of BSI.
They shut down the bank.
Told their license in Singapore, yeah, which is a huge step for a major financial center.
Mm-hmm.
They also fined several other banks for failures in preventing money laundering, and they actually imposed criminal sanctions on some bankers, like Yak Chi and Yeo Jiwei.
So jail time for some bankers.
Yes, though the book does note that the fines slapped on the banks themselves seem pretty small compared to the scale of the crime they enabled.
Right. A drop in the ocean for them, maybe? So Singapore acted strongly elsewhere.
The book notes a lack of really significant sanctions elsewhere, at least initially. But the scandal eventually had this massive transformative impact back in Malaysia, politically.
How so?
It was a huge factor in Mahathir Mohamad's shock return to power at age 92,
92.
and the opposition winning the 2018 general election, ending decades of rule by Najib's party.
Wow. So it brought down the government.
It played a huge part. Najib himself tried to flee the country on a private jet the day after the election loss. He was stopped, questioned, and eventually charged.
Okay, so connecting this absolutely incredible story to the bigger picture, why does this matter to, us, the listeners, wherever we are?
It matters for so many reasons. First, just the sheer scale of the crime.
Right.
Billions stolen from a developing nation.
Right.
This wasn't just abstract numbers on a screen. This was money that could have built schools, hospitals, infrastructure,
Yeah.
impacting generations of Malaysians.
Yeah, that's the real human cost.
Second, it shows a massive breakdown across multiple layers of the global financial system.
Mm-hmm.
Banks, auditors, the book mentions big names like KPMG, Ernst & Young were auditors at various points, lawyers, regulators. They all failed to stop it. Or worse, some were actively enabling it.
And the offshore secrecy stuff.
Absolutely key.
Yeah.
Those secrecy jurisdictions, the complex structures, they made the crime possible on this scale.
And it wasn't just a Malaysian problem, right?
Not at all. Truly global reach.
Mm.
Institutions, people in the U.S., Europe, the Middle East, all over Asia were involved. It just starkly shows how interconnected the financial world is.
And how easily vulnerabilities can be exploited globally.
Exactly. Vulnerabilities in one place, like a state fund in Malaysia, get exploited using seemingly legitimate players in London, New York, Geneva, Singapore.
The story also says something really stark about, the facade of wealth, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely. It shows how easily someone could build and maintain this persona of extreme wealth and influence just through spending and access, even when the money behind it was completely illegitimate.
Which raises huge questions about due diligence, right?
Yeah.
What red flags did all these banks and firms miss or ignore?
Exactly. And what responsibility do the enablers have? The bankers, the lawyers, the auditors, maybe even the celebrities who took payments? Where's the line?
Yeah. Tough questions.
Ultimately, this is just a prime, chilling example of kleptocracy ruled by thieves in action. The book really frames it in that broader context, how kleptocracy threatens stability, development, democracy everywhere, how dirty money corrupts everything it touches.
It's a really sobering look at how the system can be gamed, especially when the incentives for people and institutions line up with profit and discretion, maybe over transparency and ethics.
So where does all this leave us? We've journeyed through this incredible book, touched on the key figures, the scheme's sometimes complex, sometimes shockingly simple, and the global fallout.
It's a story that's still playing out, really, with ongoing trials and investigations, and it leaves us with a lot to think about.
Indeed. Given all the complexities revealed here, the shell companies, the offshore centers, the sheer speed of transactions, the involvement of huge global institutions, how can ordinary citizens or even regulators really track money flows in today's global financial system? Is it even possible sometimes?
That's a huge question. Or what responsibility do all those professionals involved, the bankers, the lawyers, the auditors, the wealth managers, truly have in preventing these massive transnational schemes? Where is the line between just providing a service and actually facilitating crime?
These are really challenging questions raised by this story, worth pondering long after you finish the book or, listen to this talk.
Absolutely. It really shines a bright, maybe uncomfortable light on the shadows of global finance. Well, thank you for joining us for this book talk deep dive into Billion Dollar Whale.
Fascinating stuff.
It really is. If you found this discussion insightful and engaging, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll have more discussions and talks unpacking compelling real-world stories just like this one.